So, what sort of startups are you working with, Katrina?
So I mostly work with B2b Saas. I have had a few really early stage companies reach out that are being started by women. And so I work in a lot of women's communities. And so in that case, I typically will work with them no matter what their niche is, just because I want to be able to provide them help and answer questions and help them think about how to start to raise money and what that looks like. But generally B2B SaaS. And oftentimes I work with companies when they're moving from SMB clients upstream to enterprise clients, because enterprise clients require a level of scale that typically they haven't had to do before. So when they're helping SMBs, they just keep adding people.
Yeah.
And when you bring on an enterprise client, they expect a level of automation, they expect a level of consistency. They don't want that you had to hire 10 people to implement them. They want to know that this can, scale the way that it needs to. And so typically those are the companies that I work with the most.
It must be difficult, when some of these smaller startups start to get busy, but they just don't have any of the processes in there, and you just basically have to knock everything down and rebuild a lot of things. Do you find much resistance from these kind of whiz bang founders?
I do get a lot of resistance. I do think probably 50% of my job is therapy for founders. I think oftentimes when you're at a specific growth stage, the struggle is that the people who got you from 0 to 5 million are probably not the people who are going to get you that next 5, 10, 15 million. And I think part of what I do is counsel people that that's okay. You can decide that you're the kind of person who works best in the circus, firestorm startup, everyone does everything, and that's your brand, that's who you are, and that's who you want to be, and that's fine. There are other people who work really good at creating a process and building the process, getting people on board to function in that process. And then there are some people who would prefer to come into a company where the process is already created and they're just executing it, right? And so I think Chase mentioned this earlier, but also just understanding yourself and where you like to be and where you thrive, I think is so key in sort of understanding. And sometimes for a founder, when it's not their time to lead their company anymore, when it's time to step back and let someone who has a skill set that's more aligned with the growth stage of the current vision of the company, to ensure that the company can actually achieve what it can. So in some cases, it's talking founders through that, which can be difficult and requires a lot of hand holding and in some cases a little pushing.
Yeah, I mean, it's the type of people that can get a startup off the ground. They love the chaos and the excitement, and it's a totally different thing that they need to become, I guess, to go to the next level. Um, is there any stories you can tell us? Some of the challenges, perhaps some things that didn't work, some that did, without giving too much away, I suppose.
Without giving too much away, yes. So I think oftentimes the struggle is the ego. And so I think there's something to be said for people who are self-aware enough to know that their ego is getting in the way. So I think there's been a few startups that I've helped where the startup hasn't achieved everything they could achieve because the founder either hasn't put trust in his team or her team, or they're not stepping back when they should. They're hiring people who know what they're doing, but they're not actually trusting them to do their job. And I think in that case, you can kind of say to yourself, well, but I'm the one who really believes in this. But once you've hired a team and that team is going to bat for you and they really believe in the mission of the company, you have to put that trust in them and you have to let them take it where they think it needs to go. And you have to listen to them. You hired them for a reason. The converse of that is I'm working right now with a nonprofit where the CEO really trusts his team and he empowers them and he believes that they understand his 10x vision. And part of being a good CEO is being able to impart that vision, but understanding that the execution falls on your